yeah, there we go. So this is it in the new A3, just the most generic one you can find, and this is the old one in the old A3. I think that tells you an awful lot about what they've done to the interior in this new car. Hello guys, and welcome back to the Volks Wizard channel. Now, the fourth generation of Audi S3 has been on sale for just over a year, but for nearly all that time it's been in the shadow of its nearest Wolfsburg rival, the Mark 8 Golf R, which stole the headlines with its dramatic exterior redesign, its divisive buttonless interior, and of course that magic torque vectoring rear differential, which brought along the option of a drift mode on a Volkswagen. In stark contrast, reports on the new S3 have suggested that we've got just more of the same, more of the old S3, which was never a bad car, but it was hardly exciting. Well, today I've got both generations here to find out exactly how much Vorsprung durch Technik has been sprinkled on the new model. Is it a noticeably better car than the old one, or has it been pegged back to not steal away sales from the brand new RS3? Well, let's find out by having a look around them, going for a very good test drive. But first, let's have a look at some statistics. Firstly, they're both based on the MQB platform. This is the underpinnings of the car, and it was first used for A3, S3 back in 2013. For this generation, it continues largely unchanged on the new model, and that means that they both share the same basic architecture. They've both got 7-speed S-tronic dual-clutch automatic gearboxes, though the older generation was available as a manual as well. They've both got Haldex electronically controlled all-wheel drive. They've both got 4-cylinder petrol-turbo EA888 engines under their bonnets, but this one's an Evo 3 version, this one's a newer Evo 4. This 2019 car produces 300 horsepower and 380 newton meters of torque. There was an earlier model that produced 310 horsepower, but because of emissions it was brought down back to 300, just like with the Golf R. This new car though does produce the full 310 and gives you 400 newton meters of torque. 0 to 62 time though is pretty much the same at 4.8 seconds for both of them. That's because this car is a little heavier at 1500 kilograms and this one's just 1465 kilograms. Size-wise, they're pretty much the same as you'd expect. This one is a little bit taller, a little bit wider, and a little bit longer. A little bit of an interesting stat is that the turning circle though is a whole metre bigger for this car at 11 metres. The older car can turn around in 10 metres. Right, enough stats. Let's go and have a walk around them. It's actually quite a rare treat to be able to compare an old model with a new one, because they rarely reside on manufacturers' press fleets simultaneously. Generally, the old model gets defleeted a long time before the new one comes along. Maybe that's deliberate, maybe manufacturers don't like the comparison, but we're going to do it today anyway. And the reason why we can on the Volks Wizard channel is because I am a car dealer. I actually bought this S3 just yesterday to sell on. It's a one private owner car, 14,000 miles, full Audi history, great spec and condition, and it's £31,000. So if you like the look of that, just get in touch via volkswizard.co.uk, and if you've got a car to sell, do the same. We'll start off then with the old boy, which is in the classic colour of Daytona grey. I think it's been in the range nearly 20 years, and the reason it's so enduring is because it looks so good. It's actually Audi design chief Mark Lichter's favourite colour because it shows off the lines of a car so well. So this car is relatively subtle, I think you'll agree. We've got a bit of silver above the diffuser, we've got silver window surrounds and S3 trademark mirrors. At the front, okay, we've got a big massive silver grille, but it's quite subtle compared to this car, because as well as the bold grille, we've got silver here, we've got a silver diffuser, and then down the side of it, we'll come back to those wheels, which are, yeah, we've got this silver sill cover, which just looks really clumsy, and it's just like an S-line, you know, they've got that as well. At the back, we've got, again, the line above the diffuser, but then we've got this really complicated section with a reflector, a fake grille, and more fake silver. What is very nice is the concave surfacing, which gives the Audi haunches very RS inspired. I mean, that is lovely, but it does need some bigger wheels. You can upgrade to 19s for just £250. I think you should do that. Forget the ride, which we'll talk about later. What is a very odd bit of proportioning is the headlights. They are humongous, particularly with an 18-inch wheel. I think they probably look a little bit better with a 19. They look massive. Look at the sleek things on here, and you've got this lovely design feature here where the bonnet line comes through the headlight and into the around the grille there on the bumper in one sort of cascade. Here, it's just a bit of a jumble. Okay, let's have a look inside. Now every time I get in an old generation A3 or S3, I'm overwhelmed by the sensation of quality, and that starts off with, don't think I'm weird, but the smell. They all have a particular smell about them that just smells expensive. Anyway, enough about smells, which I can't really get over on a video. Let's talk about the door cards there. So we've got some aluminium there, bits of aluminium around there, chrome tips on the window switches and the mirror switch. Plastics are pretty good. It looks expensive. It looks very Audi. Down here it continues. So we've got some really nice mats, really nice quality. I think they've been stolen out of a GTI though, because they've got a red stripe and they've got some honeycomb. Quite fancy those for my car, but they're definitely Audi mats. And look at this carpet. You'd be happy to have it in your house. It's that good. Let's just compare those bits with the new car then. So let's start off with the smell. Yeah, it's not bad actually. The Napa leather does help things. Door card, it's like over design and downgrade the quality, I think. So this isn't very nice plastic. This isn't particularly nice fake leather, and the stitching, it doesn't do anything. It's just there for show, and I'm not sure about that. Bit of aluminium there. Again, this looks cheaper than the old car. Okay, I quite like the fact we've got grey leather. It does look a bit more expensive. Let's have a look down here then. My biggest issue with this car is actually not the carpets, but this big bit of plastic here that looks very A1 or Polo. You know, it's just so visible and so cheap looking, and the carpets are similar. I mean, okay, not many people will notice carpets, but I clean cars and I take a particular interest in them, and somebody has consciously decided to downgrade the carpet to levels of Golf or even up. Floor mats are okay, but again, they're not really particularly exuberant, just a bit of contrast stitching there. Let's just remind ourselves of this car, particularly the centre consoles. Just have a look at the plastics there. We've got this grainy stuff here that's lovely, and all this just looks expensive. On our S3 models you can have quattro interior styling pack, and that covers this in Alcantara, and then it just looks amazing. Seats, well, we haven't got quilting, which is quite nice on the new model. Like the new model, they just say S. When you bought an S3, you want it to say S3, not S. It's not an S line, but they're really nice quality. They've worn quite well in 14,000 miles. Adjustable thigh supports, they're okay. We have got flat bottom steering wheel, which looks mega. This car has got a bit of a tiller from a ship. It's a no-cost option, believe it or not, if you don't want flat bottom. And there you go. It just looks really big and really kind of old-fashioned. But some people like the steering wheels to be round, so yeah, it caters for them. We've got a key, so we've got this amazing storage slot for a key there. Just put it in there and you can't lose it. Let's just get in and have a closer look then. So this is a very last of the line Mark III S3. They gave you virtual cockpit as standard. You had the pop-up screen there. Look at that lag, people. It's not just Mark 8 Golf, that lag. That's going to take a while. So we've got virtual cockpit here. You can have navigation on both. We've got nice tactile knobs and buttons for the climate control. We've got a traditional mechanical DSG shifter. We've got the MMI controller here, which all feels lovely. We've got this knurled knob for the volume, which is kind of easy to knock by mistake. And look at that. It's even got a knurling on the 12-volt socket, cover blank. It's delightful. Drive select button for the modes over here where the driver needs it. But all these, you know, are really nice and tactile, and these are too. We've got nice plastic for the dash, Quattro logo there, and a flock-lined glove box. Yeah, actually, interestingly, even this A3 doesn't have flock-lined door pockets, which are a Golf thing. So, okay, let's show you the virtual cockpit. So let's back that out and go to the maps. There you go. Golf people, look away now, because you can actually have the nav on both screens simultaneously, and that is really, really quite nice. So yeah, it's really, really nice in here. I think if we had a touchscreen on there, kept the MMI, I think that would be pretty much perfect, because putting navigation destinations in using the MMI is a little bit clumsy. Okay, let's have a closer look at the inside of the neue S3. I don't think the doors feel as good, but maybe that's just me. Yeah, we've done the door card before. The B&O badge helps, but so yeah, that's really nice. Electric adjustment is an option on this car, as is the sunroof, which does tone down the roof a bit, thank the Lord. Okay, in here We've got the tiller from a boat, but other than that, it's, yeah, well, actually it's quite different. So we haven't got a pop-up screen. We've got this integrated screen, which is a bit bigger. We've got some keyless entry and go. We've got this touchpad for the audio volume, which isn't particularly nice. And then this shifter, which is shift by wire, which it's not really a styling thing. It doesn't say S-Tronic on it like that one does, but it works really well, and actually you'll probably find it in use a lot easier than the mechanical one. Like sometimes if you park on a hill and you let it roll back against the stop in park and then try and select drive, it can be really hard. This is just slick all the time, and snicking between drive and reverse is really easy, as I will demonstrate. Look at that. So, you know, it's not all bad. The cup holders are pretty bad though, actually. They look really quite nasty, and you touch this plastic that feels really cheap. We do have switches though, so this is the last vestige of the buttons in the MQB platform Volkswagen Group cars of this size anyway. So as I said in my other video, Vorsprung durch buttons, we have them for climate control. Don't have knobs. We've drawn the line at knobs. We're not going to have knobs in this car. We've just got sort of buttons really. Driver select, rather annoyingly, is not reachable from the driver's seat. If you backs all the way there, it should be there, but they haven't bothered to move it over. We've got wireless charging there, which I think is extra. There are a few extras on this car that are not standard, but they're not particularly obvious. So, you know, compared to the Golf interior, some people will prefer this. I think functionally it's good. Sitting here as a driver, it's a nice place to be. The virtual cockpit doesn't really seem to move things on. I'm sure it's done something. It's probably maybe higher resolution. This screen's definitely a step up. I know some people prefer the MMI, but this is just so easy to use, and it's in a great position just here. So yeah, it's got Google Maps as well. Stainless pedals. I think the sill covers are illuminated. Yeah. The air vents deserve a quick mention as well, because they're tacked onto the dash rather clumsily here and here. Apparently it's a Lamborghini thing, but it just looks a bit wrong in an Audi. They do have two saving graces though. Firstly, when you open and close them, that feels really nice, and that does feel like proper metal, that bit there. And also they're in the right position to give you fresh air to your face on the Golf. They're down here, and that's really a little bit too low. Also, let's have a look at the 12 volts blank. So this is it in the new A3, just the most generic one you can find, and this is the old one in the old A3. I think that tells you an awful lot about what they've done to the interior in this new car. Keys though, the Audi makes it up a bit. You've got this key which has got the S logo on it. This is actually the old key, and it has nothing special on it at all. It's only the RS that got the RS logo on the key. Right, that's the interior done. Let's have a look in the boot. This car has a 325 litre. It's very unusual for a boot to be smaller, but it is. Down here, we've got this foam thing at the back for the tools, which in the Golf are just shoved in these side lockers. And we've got no carpet on the boot floor. We've got no spare wheel either, even though it looks like it's ready for one. Meanwhile, in the older car, it's got 340 litres, which is quite intriguing because it looks very similar. It's got the same sort of wasted space down here. We've got an Audi sound system as standard, so the subwoofer is here in the boot. Note that it's carpeted, and I really don't like a car that doesn't have a carpeted boot floor. The new Golf does, thank God, and it does keep road noise down. It's really only Seat Leon, possibly Octavia, that didn't have them in the past. Right, all that's left is a quick look under the bonnets. Thankfully, they both have still telescopic struts, and the pulls remain on the correct side for right-hand drive with the new model. So there we go, not an awful lot to see. As you can see, the architecture is pretty much the same. EA888 Evo 4 here, EA888 Evo 3, but you can see the airbox is the same, battery position's the same, fuse box is the same, so it's definitely not a brand new car under the bonnet. Okay, you've seen how it looks, but can the new S3 drive better than the old S3? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's go and drive these two S3s on some really good country roads. But before we get to the B roads, I think it's important to test the cars on the motorway, because that's the real world kind of use these cars will have. We're starting off with the old S3 and just going to get up to 70 miles an hour now and set the cruise. We've only got normal cruise, non-adaptive, and it's operated by a stalk down here, just like on the newer car. It just doesn't have as much functionality as that car. And it's pretty refined in here. The windows are all shut. We don't have a sunroof. We do have carpet on the boot floor, which helps keep the noise down. We're on 18-inch wheels with pretty much the same size tyres, and yeah, I'd say it's a bit quieter than the newer car in here, but we'll just double check that when we get in that later. The driving position's great. I'm in the lowest position the seat will go. I like to have my mouth sort of in line with the top of the steering wheel, and I can do that in this car, which is good. We don't have any form of lumbar support on this car, whether it be mechanical or electric, which is a bit of an oversight, I think, because that's quite a nice way of keeping comfortable on longer journeys. Now, at 60 miles an hour, we're doing just under 2,000 RPM, which means it's a very, very tall geared car, this, when you're in 7th. Anyway, this is a later S3 Mark III. It's a facelift model which came with 7-speed S-tronic, just like Golf R did when it became 7.5, and that means they've got a much higher top gear, which means you get better MPG, so it's not bad at all. The newer car, I can't imagine being any taller geared than this, because this is really tall. Doing 67 at 68 miles an hour for just 2,000 RPM. That's like better than a diesel, or about the same as a modern diesel. Anyway, okay, that's enough of motorway. Let's go and see what the old S3 can do on a British B road. Okay, well, if the motorway is the reality, the British B road is the dream, particularly an empty one that hopefully we'll have today. Now, I've put the car in dynamic mode from auto mode using drive select. We've got passive dampers on this car, just like on the new S3. I'd say it's a little bit more comfortable in this car. The newer cars, the last generation of hot hatches from the Volkswagen Group, all seem to be a little bit firmer than they were before, but we'll talk about the chassis in a bit. Let's talk about the exhaust first. Now, this is a petrol particulate filter car. There's no real reason why a PPF car needs to be quiet, because cars like the Club Sport Mark 8s, even the Mark 7 Golf R Estate I had last year, they're really, really quite loud. But this really does lack any sort of exhaust character, which is a real shame. Anyway, I've got some footage of the old car followed by the new car. Okay, let's talk about the brakes now then. So they've both got 340mm brakes. They're not brilliant, they're not massive, but they're perfectly fine for the road. It's a little bit greasy out there, but yeah, a bit of ABS activation there, but for the road they will be perfectly fine. If you're going to do a track day, you never know, you might do, you probably need to upgrade. Right, onto the chassis then. So this generation isn't particularly well regarded when it comes to its chassis, and it does, even with four-wheel drive, push on the limit, and it's a little bit greasy out there today. There's no getting away from the fact it's a fast car. Both these S3s are super fast hot hatches. Think Golf R and you'll be there or thereabouts. Nobody's ever complained about the pace of a Golf R, apart from the following police car. Now, on this country road, I'd say it feels a little bit more compliant than the newer car, and the damping's quite nice, but it doesn't really have an awful lot of feel. On that tree there, you just don't know if you're going to hit it or stay on the tarmac. It does the job. It's still quite fun, and if you drive it like a lunatic, I'm sure you will get it to move around a bit more and, yeah, be a bit more exciting. But I think within the realms of driving responsibly on the road, it's a bit clinical And whilst I can't demonstrate it here, I have felt it push into understeer quite readily. So it'll be interesting to see how the newer S3 performs in that area. So let's go and drive it right now. As with the old car, we're starting off driving the new S3 on the motorway, and the first thing you notice is that it's not particularly quiet in here. I'm not sure why. We do have a sunroof, but it's closed and the blinds pull forward. Maybe it's a lack of boot carpet, because a lot of the noise is actually coming from the back. I don't think the tyres are to blame, because they're Goodyear Eagle F1 Super Sports, which I've experienced on my Mark 8 Golf GTI Club Sport, and they're not a noisy tyre as the EU noise rating confirmed. So maybe it's a lack of soundproofing. But yeah, it's quite disappointing. I feel like I have to raise my voice to talk to you guys. If I had a passenger, there wouldn't be an awful lot of talking going on, I think, which is a bit disappointing from an Audi, because they're generally pretty good motorway cars. The surface is relatively, well, it's perfectly normal here on the M40. It's not a particularly coarse surface. If I move into the middle lane, it's no different. So yeah, it's a bit strange. Other than that though, it's a really nice car to drive. Driving position, I've always with Audis, is perfect, and we've got optional extra 4-way adjustment of the lumbar support, as well as electric adjustment of the seats. So yeah, it's super comfy. The seats are really good. They're not particularly hugging or supportive, but they're great for long journeys. We're using adaptive cruise control now. We're doing 70 miles an hour, by the way, pretty much dead, so it's not even particularly fast, and it's so noisy. As with Audis, there's cruise control on another stalk underneath the indicator, which takes a bit of getting used to, but once you get used to it, it's quite a nice way of trimming your speed or adjusting the distance between you and the car in front. The radar is very low down on the grille, which means it could be quite prone to damage. It's very different to where it is on the Golf behind the badge, so just beware of that with all the pheasants running around in autumn as it is now. But yeah, I could happily, maybe with some earplugs, drive this to Ingolstadt and back, no problem. Right, let's go and try it now on a proper British B road. Okay, here we are driving the new S3 on the kind of road where it really does need to excite. The old car was good, but it didn't get the hair standing up on the back of my neck. Now, in order to do that, I put the car in dynamic mode, which is the most aggressive setting. We don't have adaptive dampers, we've just got passive, which means they don't change when you put it in dynamic mode. And I should point out, this car is quite firm. This road's a bit Germanic in its texture. It's a bit too smooth to really test the suspension, but rest assured, if you don't live in Warwickshire, you live in Gloucestershire, Northamptonshire, Oxfordshire, you will find this car a little bit too firm, and adaptive dampers would be a good idea. We've also got a lot of fake RS3 plumbed in, which is fine because it does sound authentic. It's much better than the fake sound you get in the Golf R, for example, Mark 7 Golf R. But let's talk about the chassis, because this is where it matters. It's an area where Audis in the past would struggle, and the old car was all right, but there's room for improvement. And the newer cars I've driven, Mark 8 Golf R, Mark 8 Club Sport, Cupra Leon, they're all better. Yeah, it just feels a little bit old school. A lot of weight on the front axle, which does translate into power understeer quite easily. This corner's a real tough one. So second gear, yeah, actually went into a little bit of understeer, and then it started to settle down a bit. That wasn't too bad, but in the other direction, that corner does separate the men from the boys. So let's have another go at that. We'll use its 11-meter turning circle to good effect. Okay. 7-speed S-tronic, by the way. It's a great gearbox. Gives you the gears when you want it. Let's have a second now. Yeah, no problem. Listen to that RS3, but will it go around a corner like an R3? I do hope not. Right. Second, it's tightened and tightens. There's a tiny bit of understeer there, so it still does it. It doesn't give you the torque vectoring to kick the back out like Golf 8R did to great effect last week on this very road. But it's not bad. I think it's got a little bit more front end bite than the old car, but it's been set up in a very, very similar way. So there's definite improvements, but it's not night and day different. It does remind me of the Mark 7 Golf R actually, which was a pretty tidy handling car, but it didn't do it with any great flair. So if you like the way the Mark 7 Golf R drives, you will undoubtedly like this car, but there's a lot more fun to be had elsewhere in the Volkswagen Group range with the Mark 8 Club Sport Cupra Leon and even the Mark 8 Golf R. Another trait of both these S3s is that they do lift-off oversteer, and that means that if you turn into a corner quite hard, you get the front end biting, come off the gas, the rear of the car steps out. The ESC does mop it up, thank God, but if it wasn't there, it would be quite dramatic, and I've been quite surprised by that on both these cars. It's not just because this older one is on some 2.5-year-old Pirellis, the newer car with its nearly new tyres is just as vulnerable to it. So it's a bit quiet today. Let's see if we can replicate it. We just need to get the front end bit on this oval roundabout. Second gear is probably the best bet. Let's just try and turn in now. Yeah, there we go. And the ESC is a little bit quicker on the newer car at mopping it up, but I don't really want to go and do it in that car and show you, so you just have to believe me. Okay, well, as you can probably tell, it's getting quite late in the day now, but it's been really good to compare the old S3 to the new one. And what I've learned is that I still have a lot of love for the older car. I love the way it packs 300 horsepower in a relatively stealthy package. I love its peerless interior build quality, but there's no getting away from the fact it is quite an old car now. The basic design has been around for 8 years, and that's quite a long time in the automotive world. It does look a little bit dated, both on the inside and the outside. And whilst it drives okay, I think the new model moves the chassis dynamics on quite significantly. If you're a keen driver, you will most definitely feel the benefit, even though it hasn't got things like torque vectoring to make the headlines. It's not all good though with the new car. I'm not sure why Audi UK are presenting the car spec like this to the press, because it doesn't do the model any favours. Imagine it in Daytona grey. Imagine it as a Vorsprung model with all the bright bits blacked out. Imagine it with 19-inch wheels, whether they be the factory option ones or aftermarket, and imagine it with magnetic ride adaptive dampers, which will give it a little bit more bandwidth because the ride is quite firm. And then you'd have actually a really nice car. I, though, personally can't get over the downgrade in interior quality. Is it just me? Am I sort of focusing on something that really doesn't have an awful lot of relevance to the typical buyer? Let me know in the comments. But because of that, I wouldn't buy either of these cars. I'd put my £40,000 or thereabouts into a second-hand RS3, the facelift model with 400 horsepower, spec'd nicely with things like sports exhaust to make the most of that 5-cylinder engine, and then I think I'd have my perfect hot Audi, at least until I can afford the new RS3. Anyway guys, thank you for watching this Volks Wizard video. If you've enjoyed it, as ever, give it a thumbs up. Please do share it, please do comment, and please do subscribe. Subscriptions aren't really going up as quickly as they need to at the moment, so if you've enjoyed the video, all I ask is that you click the subscription button, click the bell icon, and I'll see you for the next one very soon.